Now there are a lot of bloodworm patterns out there, but most of the ones you're going to see nowadays are pretty modern with some vinyl materials or crazy shaped hooks. What I'm going to do today, it's an old school one. Hello everybody, welcome to Savage Flies. I'm Matt, thanks for stopping by. So before we get into today's fly, I want to talk a little bit about Saturday's pattern, the bristleback. Now, if you recall, at the end of that video, we did a little contest, and why I did that was because, I pay attention to the YouTube metrics, the average view duration, the click-through rate, and those kind of things. And I was just getting curious as to how many of you guys out there, watch most of the video all the way through. So in the last minute of that video, I said, hey, leave a comment and work in the word chicken, and I'll do a random drawing and we'll have a $50 gift card from Jay Stockard. And I have to tell you, that was funny. It was, some of the comments that you guys left were just hilarious. And so it did answer one of my questions of a video that gets, 1,000 or 1,200 views in the first couple of days. How many of you out there are watching it, almost to the end? And I found out that at least 140 of you watched that video all the way through because you left some crazy comments working in the word chicken. So I just did that drawing, and the winner was Chef Flex 778. So congratulations, Chef Flex. I'll leave a comment under your comment saying get in touch with me, and I'll get this $50 Jay Stockard gift card on the way to you. So okay, that was a pretty fun contest, just hilarious. We might do it again, but let's get into today's fly, the bloodworm. So I got today's pattern from Mike Dawes' 1985, the Fly Tier's Manual. Mike Dawes is an English author, and Taff Price did a lot of the drawings in here. We talked about him before, but it's a really pretty cool book. If you don't have this and want to check out a used copy, I think it's well worth it. And the Bloodworm Larva in this book, it's really an old school. It doesn't have any vinyl D-rib or anything fancy on it. It's just got a red floss body, red marabou tail, and then a little peacock herl for the head. So if you like old school patterns, try this one. I think it's pretty cool. It was pretty fun to tie. I think you're gonna like it. Let's give it a shot. So there's one in the vise, a bloodworm larva. Pretty simple pattern. Recipe in this Taff Price book says use a size 12 or 14. Now it doesn't say what length or type hook, just 12 to 14 down eye. So I'm using a 14 down eye, but I think you do want it on a little bit of a long shanked hook. So this is a 2 extra long nymph hook and red thread. So lay it base down to the start of your bend here. Now the first thing we're going to tie in, it's about the only exciting thing on this fly. It's a big tuft of red marabou. And this is definitely, you can tell it's got the marabou properties here. But when you get it down to the tip, it looks like you're losing some of the marabou, but don't worry about that. I mean, it's still going to be soft and it's still going to give you that, the marabou look through the water. So about a body length. So where my fingers are, that's where I'm going to catch it in. But I'm going to go ahead and snip off the front here just to get that out of my way. It would be all over the place while I'm tying it in. So I'm going to do a pinch wrap right here, couple wraps, and if it flares out on you back here, don't worry, you kind of want a little bit of flare in the back. So I think that is going to be fine right there. So a couple of tight wraps right here. I'm going to lick my fingers, see if I can get this to stick together just a little bit while I take some loose wraps right here, very loose wraps, just getting it back up front. I want this to help me build a little bit of an underbody. Okay, and that's enough. Remember, we're going to have the head, which is, you could call it a thorax, I guess, but it's not really a thorax because it's just not that kind of bug. Let's go ahead and capture this in. And the next component, he calls for fluorescent red. So this is a fluorescent red thread. I'm going a little bit thicker. I'm going with a 140. I mean, thicker than the time thread I'm using. And what I did in one of them a little bit ago was I caught it in, and then I folded it back over and I wrapped the rib as 2 strands. But I think that was just a little bit too thick. So I'm going to wrap 1 strand for a rib right here, and I think that's going to be fine. So I'll just put a few wraps right here, taking it back, which is also kind of helping me compact this body a little bit more. Now when I get back up front, red floss. Just standard red floss right here. Also, keep in mind, this floss can be finicky to work with. One of them I did just a minute ago. I've got some calluses on my thumbs right now, some rough spots. And if you nick this floss, it just makes a mess of it. So just be careful. I'm gonna wrap it down kind of like I would any wet fly, floss bodied pattern. Just wrap it down and back up, trying to keep it flat. But if it doesn't get perfectly flat, don't worry about it. Okay, I'm gonna call that flat enough. Let's catch this off up here with a couple of wraps. Couple more just for fun. Now let's wrap this rib. And this is still just one strand, but I'm gonna spin it to kind of quarter it up just as well. And I think on this size 14, 4 wraps is probably gonna be sufficient. 4 wraps that are gonna be visible, and then the 5th one will probably be under this herl head up here. So that's gonna look good right there. Let's go ahead and catch this off. And if you're wondering, is a fish gonna be able to see that red fluorescent looks pretty similar to that red underbody, but remember, a fish can see a little bit more into the UV spectrum than we can, so this is really what they're gonna see a little bit right there. They'll definitely be able to notice that this is a ribbed looking worm. All right, so the last thing we're gonna do here, just a peacock herl for the head. So this is the leftover piece I had from the last fly, so this stem's getting a little bit thick back here. I'm gonna go ahead and snip that instead of try to break it. Let's get our thread right back here where we want the back of our head to be. And not making this too thick. 5 or 6 wraps, a couple of them on top of each other if you want, just to try to give you a little bit more thickness. I don't think it needs to be too thick. It's really just giving you a black bump up here for the head. Slightly thicker than the body, but I don't think it needs to be a real big bushy head. So I think we can get away with that right there. You know what, let's go ahead and try to put a few more, just to bulk it up a little bit more right here. So these wraps are going right on top of the wraps right under it, and I think this is gonna work right there. Okay, before I snip that off, I'm going to get plenty of securing wraps right there. Because I did one and then a little while ago and had that herl slip out on me, and I had to kind of go back and redo the head. So just pulling that back right here, a few extra wraps, just enough room for the whip finish, and let's do a 4-turn whip finish. And there we go, drop a head cement on this guy and he's ready for your box. So a pretty simple little bloodworm pattern. And from everything I hear, these can be pretty effective flies. So that's it, everybody. I appreciate you watching. Y'all take care and we'll see you next time.